Good evening, everyone. So let's welcome to tonight's webinar, How to Clean Your Home's Grounding System. I want to send a quick reminder out to everybody. If you have questions during tonight's presentation, we will have an extended Q&A session afterwards. So if you have the questions, please post them in the Q&A pod. Not the chat pod, right? If they go into the chat pod, people, we will probably lose them. So put them in the Q&A pod, and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So quickly, today's outline, we'll start with a very brief intro of myself, then we'll get into the main learning. That's broken into two parts. One is the hazards of grounding, and then the second, more important part, is how to clean your whole home's grounding system. That'll be followed by a special offer, and then an extended Q&A. So once again, if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A pod. Briefly about me, my name is R. Blank. I'm the CEO of Shield Your Body and the host of the Healthier Tech podcast, formerly served on the faculty of the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering, and along with my father, Dr. Martin Blank, co-authored Overpowered about the science of EMF health effects. And this all follows a 20-year career in software engineering. So to begin, last month, Andrew, whom I'll be introducing again shortly, he and I ran a webinar where we launched a new product called the NCB. And in that webinar, we explained some of the hazards of grounding, hazards that the NCB helps to protect you from. And I'll briefly explain those again now. But for those of you who are interested, you can watch the full replay on the page at shieldyourbody.com/ground. And even if you attended last month's webinar, there's going to be new information for you here tonight. So let's dive in. So we're talking tonight about grounding. In some ways, grounding, also sometimes called earthing, and let me just be really clear. Andrew, can you confirm for me that I'm sharing the correct screen? Because I didn't do that in practice.
You are looking good.
Okay, thank you very much. So earthing or grounding, it's a simple topic in some ways, right? The whole point is to put your body in direct contact with the Earth's surface. You walk barefoot, right? On park grass, on beach sand. And doing this helps you discharge positive ionization that you accumulate from all your EMF exposure of modern life. And it enables you to absorb the Earth's own natural electromagnetic field called the Schumann resonance. And there are a lot of benefits to grounding. You'll feel less stressed after just a few minutes. And grounding in a safe area also neutralizes free radicals in our bodies. But a lot of us can't ground into nature, at least not as much as we would like. So we buy grounding products like grounding mats or grounding sheets, and then we plug these into the wall. So they make contact with the grounding conductor in your home, which connects your electrical system to the earth. And that's how you can use a product like you see here on screen in your bedroom and actually connect to the earth, right? It all happens through the grounding conductor on your home's electrical system. And in addition to grounding products, there are many types of larger scale EMF protection products that also require grounding, like bed canopies, pictured here, or walls painted with EMF shielding paint, and so forth. This is to help discharge electric fields from the surface of the shielding by connecting to the grounding conductor. Unfortunately, grounding this way, that is into the grid, has some risks. And what's really important to understand is that you're exposed to some of these risks, even if you don't use grounding products or grounded EMF protection products, because the grounding conductor is part of your electrical system. And that means it runs throughout your walls and floors. What's even worse is these forces can spread beyond your electrical system. One common example, particularly on older homes, is when your service panel is grounded to your home water plumbing. This then leads to your plumbing, like your metal faucet, becoming a conduit for these EMF risks. In other words, these health risks I'm about to explain to you aren't just relevant to people who use grounding products. They are relevant to people who live in almost every home and apartment. These risks that I'm about to describe, they include contact current, dirty electricity, and magnetic fields. Now, I know some of you may not be aware of all of these terms, so I will try to explain them for you. And I'll be brief because you could, particularly about contact current, because you can watch last month's webinar for more detailed descriptions of these hazards. So let's dive in with contact current. Current is a flow of electricity. And we all know that current is dangerous. Sure, it's how we are able to power our light bulbs and our televisions. It's also how we execute prisoners. So while current is important to our lives, we're never supposed to actually come into contact with it. That's really dangerous. Unfortunately, it turns out that we are being exposed to current more than we thought through a force that we call contact current, because there is current on the grounding system. There really shouldn't be, but there is. And when we come into contact with it, and we come into contact with it when we touch things connected to the grounding system. It shouldn't be there, but it is. Why is this stray current on our grounding system? Well, there are a lot of reasons. First, there are a lot of mistakes with our appliances, mistakes that most manufacturers and electricians don't even care about. As one example, in this image, we see an appliance that came from the factory with the neutral bonded to the appliance frame. That leads to current being dumped onto the ground, which sends it back into the grounding system of our home, where it can reach everything connected to that ground, like our grounding mats and grounded EMF painted walls. And this is just one example. There are many other mistakes made in outlets and subpanels that put current onto the grounding system. What's more, even if you have the cleanest electrical system in your home, you can still be impacted by contact current. Because of the nature of the grid, current on the grounding conductor can transfer between homes through the utility neutrals and through water pipes. So this current can be dumped onto the grounding conductor in your neighbor's house and then still end up on the grounding conductor in your home. Now, we don't generally realize this current because the levels are super low, right? Really, really low. Like if you touched an exposed wire and you got shocked, that's current you can feel. But what we're talking about here, these are oftentimes at levels where you don't feel it. But even though it's really low, it turns out that the levels that are commonly found in homes like yours are at levels that are higher than what the US government says causes cancer, right? So how much contact current is harmful? I won't cover this part in detail again, because this is covered in a lot more detail last month, but it comes down to a report commissioned by the US Congress and performed by the National Institutes of Health in the 1990s, and then a follow-on report by a group called EPRI, the Electrical Power Research Institute, formed by and for the power companies in the 1970s. And between these two organizations, right, they found a value of current that is associated with increased rates of leukemia. And that value is 1 microamp. Now that sounds really small. I mean, it literally has micro in the name, and it is small, really small, but how small? We've all heard the term amp before. It's commonly used. So if we think of an amp like $1 million, well, then a microamp is just a single dollar. It is 1/1,000,000th of an amp. And again, that is the level that is associated with increased rates of leukemia, according to the National Institutes of Health report. And this slide we have here just to help illustrate just how small a microamp is. It is so small, right? So when are you exposed to a value this small? Often, a lot. And so to help demonstrate this, here's a video that Andrew, who I'll be introducing shortly, made. So he's going to be taking measurements on appliances. And we see here it starts with 6.7, 6.6 milliamps on the stove. Now we get to 8.9 milliamps oh, sorry, the dishwasher and then the stove. And now when he's touching both the dishwasher and the stove, we get up to 13 milliamps. Now I want to underscore, right, these are milliamps. And I was just talking about microamps. So a milliamp is a thousandth of an amp, and a microamp is a millionth of an amp. So that means the measurement you just saw, where Andrew got 13 milliamps touching both of these devices at the same time, that is 13,000 times greater than the threshold of harm that we've been talking about. And it is so low, right? 1 microamp is so low that we regularly experience contact current levels in excess of 1 microamp just from touching grounded appliances and grounded devices. And when we use grounding products, and when we use grounded EMF protection products. Now, the second threat is dirty electricity. Now, this is a term that many people know, but even though a lot of people have heard of it, many may not actually understand the term and what it means, right? So here we see a sine wave, and that's what electricity, when you measure it, like with an oscilloscope, that's what it should look like, right? We're supposed to receive standardized, clean electricity from the grid, from the power plants. But what happens is you have all these things plugged into the grid, right? You have blenders, and you have your cell phone chargers, and you have other motors and refrigerators, and all of these things that are plugged into the grid. And what these things do is they create spikes and surges, variations in the voltage and the frequency. And so that turns what should be a clean sine wave into this dirty sine wave. And that's where the term dirty electricity comes from. Now, and this is what we want to avoid. Now, it's a big topic with a lot of information, and it's outside of the scope of this webinar to go into dirty electricity in detail. So if you want to learn more, we have a great post, shieldyourbody.com/dirty-electricity, where you can read more on this topic. But briefly, the term comes from a book of the same name by Dr. Sam Millam, who performed a whole bunch of research. And what he found, what he did is he went around the country examining death records, death certificates and death records, and the cause of death in those records from before the electrical grid was introduced and after the electrical grid was introduced. And again, you know, the grid didn't get deployed to the whole country at once, right? So it was at different times in different parts of the country. And what he found is there's a whole set of diseases that did not exist before the introduction of the grid that did start to appear in these areas once the grid was deployed, once the region was electrified. He called these the diseases of civilization, and they include Alzheimer's, infertility, depression, heart disease, and Lou Gehrig's disease. And again, Dr. Millam was able to show that these diseases of civilization only started to manifest once the power grid was introduced in an area. And they, as a result, these diseases of civilization emerged in different places at different times because the grid emerged at different places in different times. Now, certain companies like Stetzer Electric make dirty electricity filters that you can use in your home to clean up the electricity. And these are great. Stetzer Electric is great. Dave Stetzer is fantastic and has contributed immensely to this field. So if you have dirty electricity filters, doesn't that fix the problem I'm talking about? That is the dirty electricity hazard from grounding? And the answer is not really, because dirty electricity filters work on the hot and the neutral, right? They leave the grounding conductor untouched. So you see in this image here, this dirty electricity filter, it has a hot and a neutral plug, but there's no, that third prong isn't there. That means that's the prong, it's the ground prong. So dirty electricity filters don't actually fix the problem on the grounding conductor. Now we get to the third threat that we're highlighting tonight, and that is magnetic fields. Magnetic fields are a type of EMF. It is right there in the name, right? Because EMF stands for electromagnetic fields. And magnetic fields are created whenever current flows. So you'll remember a few slides back, I was talking about contact current. which is current flowing on the grounding conductor. Even though it shouldn't be flowing on the grounding conductor, current is flowing on the grounding conductor. And when current flows, magnetic fields are created. And that means magnetic fields, when there's current flowing on the grounding conductor, magnetic fields are emanating off of the grounding conductor. And you are exposed to those magnetic fields regardless of whether you are in contact with a grounded product, right? And that's a really key point I want to underscore. You are exposed to the EMF pollution on your grounding conductor, whether or not you use any grounded products. Because to be exposed to the magnetic fields, you don't actually need to touch the grounding conductor. You don't need to be in contact with the grounding conductor because those come into the environment. They emanate throughout your living space, which can be a particular problem in bedrooms where our heads tend to be positioned right up close to the walls where the electrical wiring is running. So that is the problem, right? Contact current, dirty electricity, and magnetic fields off of the grounding conductor. So what can we do? Is the situation hopeless? Well, the good news is not anymore. Now, last month, Andrew McAfee and I introduced all of you to the NCB. The NCB makes it safer to ground your body by eliminating contact current and dirty electricity from your grounding products. While the NCB is powerful and a really valuable new tool for EMF protection, it only works on one grounding product at a time, which leaves the question, what if you wanted to eliminate these threats for your entire home? And that leads me to tonight's announcement. And to actually make the actual announcement, I would like to introduce you all to Andrew McAfee.
Thank you, R.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andrew, for making time tonight.
And if you can just enable me to be a host.
It has happened already.
Very good. I'm putting up my screen now, and then I'm going to be sharing. I think I got it right. Do you see the full screen?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
All right. Very good. Thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to see the turnout. This is fantastic. And thank you, R, for putting this together. So I'm Andrew McAfee. I am a consultant, and I came through indirect reasons. I'm really kicking myself. I didn't have more electronics experience when I was a younger person. But anyway, I've been electric since 2001, and I wrote some books to try to help other people understand that condition, the Killing Current book series, available on my website, Home EMF Tracing. And I also have video presentations in a course called Staying Healthy in a 5G World. So I made my money being an orchestral musician, have a master's in conducting, and still conduct the Nutcracker. And long story short, my wife and I were injured by bad wiring in a brand new home when we first were married. So this, of course, passed the inspection, and who would catch it, right? Well, they were supposed to catch these problems, but a lot of people there's too many wiring problems, and they don't take the time to actually find these unhealthy situations. And it's just a fire code. It's not a health standard that we're dealing with. So a lot of people are getting injured. They just don't know it. And that's what happened to us. And long story short, I quit the musician business, and because I was becoming more and more in demand as an EMF consultant, and in 2017 went full time. And I do have a residential electrician's career diploma. Now, I'm not a licensed electrician. I hope in a few months to be able to take that test and pass it. It requires 4,000 hours confirmed journeyman time in the field with an electrician. So that will take place later this year, hopefully. Now, there are a number of problems, as R has gone into, that exist in homes that have no solutions until now. A lot of wiring problems. Of course, you could fix the wiring problems, but there are also a lot of problems that come from the grid and have no breakers to turn them off, and they're just flooding right into the house. So I spent a lot of time creating a device that could stop these influences, this current and dirty electricity and magnetic fields coming into our home on the grounding system. And that evolved into the NCB Pro. And the NCB Pro really does eliminate these three risks on our grounding system in our home. There's just so many problems that exist in homes now, and everybody blames it on, oh, I'm feeling the RF, or I'm feeling dirty electricity. And it's really the current or whatever influences from the grounding system. And there, we're focusing on three tonight. Of course, the contact current, you're touching something, you get electrocuted, the dirty electricity, and the magnetic fields. And these are all from your home's grounding system, the grounding conductors, that third prong. Here's a very simple description of one of the problems I find in people's homes, especially those with, if you have your own well out in the yard or out in the backyard, whatever, that well pump has a big old shaft down into the earth, and the grid current that is moving through the earth gets onto that well pump and comes up that shaft and gets onto the equipment grounding conductor for that appliance circuit. And that current comes right into the home. And sometimes that it'll create a magnetic field right across the sleeping area or your kitchen or whatever it is. And there's no breaker that'll turn off that grounding conductor. So this is one of the primary reasons that I developed the NCB was for foreign current sources and well pumps. And there are dog fence frequencies and lots of other sources that we'll get into, and I've gone into in other presentations, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. One really important point I want everybody to know is if you drive a ground rod into your yard for shielding paint or for your grounding mat, you have no protection at all. Your home has breakers, trips, then something for overcurrent devices and things like that. You need to have access to that protection system. And you can't just drive a ground rod out in the earth and expect any of your breakers to work. In fact, you avoid that whole system. And my NCB Pro has a component in it that activates your breakers, keeps that level of protection for you. Because if you just drive a ground rod out in the earth, let's say this lamp here is getting hit by a full 120 volts. If there's a fault here, that earth is going to provide too much resistance. There's not going to be enough energy to go back to trip a breaker or to protect you. So earth is not an effective ground fault path. So there has to be another component available to you to activate your breakers. So the dirty electricity component is something that is quite new. And I want to show you in this little short video. This is actually on my breaker panel. I have about 18 milliamps of current coming in from the earth. And this conductor red and the black conductor is on the other end of it, coming in on the red and to the panel in the black. So about 17 or 18 milliamps. So there's a lot of current coming in on this wire and going into there. And what I want to show you next is the hertz. There's 120 hertz. There's the frequencies on that. There's a lot of other frequencies in too, but I thought this was the most interesting, the 120, because usually the 120 is canceled. But anyway, there's the device, the NCB Pro. And by plugging in, it got rid of all the current. And then the next screen is showing you the frequencies. And boom, 0. So that took care of those two first elements, 100%. Now, the magnetic field component is another element. And I want to show you a video here. This child had a magnetic field at the head of his bed, 1.2 milligauss. And this is from the furnace coolant line, the line set that runs between the AC and the furnace. And you see that green wire there, and this amp clamp is showing you there was current around that grounding conductor coming from this furnace. And at one point here, it goes up to about a half an amp of current on that grounding conductor. And this is pretty typical. There's a transformer in there that's grounded. And yeah, it's spiked up to about 0.6, 0.5 amps. And just that amount of current created that magnetic field at the child's head of the bed. So installing the NCB, as you can see, the electrician is now doing, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, putting that in, stop the current on that grounding conductor, and I'm going back to the bed, boom, it's gone. Now only down to the background grid level outside, 0.3 milligauss. So we've got the contact current eliminated, the dirty electricity eliminated, and the magnetic fields eliminated, and especially from outside grid sources where you turn all your breakers off and there's nothing turning those off. That's where the NCB Pro excels. And of course, there are the problems from every appliance in your home creating dirty electricity and other issues in the home that can also be eliminated. So R, thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to checking back with everyone later in the Q&A session. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share now and give it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. Just getting my share set back up. I really appreciate you, well, for inventing the NCB, but then also taking the time tonight to explain your brilliant invention to us. Now, before we get to the Q&A and the special offer I have for everyone, I want to underscore a couple of things. The NCB Pro is the first and only product in the world that does what Andrew just explained. That's why he's filed a patent on it. And Andrew invented the NCB and the NCB Pro not just to solve a problem or a theoretical problem, but to solve his problem and his clients' real world problems. This stroke of genius was born out of necessity and real world needs. The NCB Pro is brand new. Very few people have yet had the chance to work with it, but those who have been very impressed. Mika Jacobs is an EMF consultant out of Chicago. Before this, there simply wasn't any way to specifically reduce current, and reducing magnetic fields often involved the huge expense of improving the home wiring system. So using the NCB is perfect for those who rent or can't afford to do complicated electrical work. Arthur Kaliski, who I believe is actually in the room tonight, he is a BBI with an electromagnetic radiation specialization. We can now connect to the earth with the NCB without the unwanted EMR pollution that flows in the earth everywhere there is utility electrical service. And Kathy Cook, another BBI EMRS, who many of you know from past SYB webinars. I am so grateful for the NCB. Both the Pro and consumer versions have helped me significantly with my most sensitive clients. The NCB has helped greatly to make these clients more comfortable in their homes. It's a great tool that I wish I had sooner. And we have these and more reviews from experts on the website at shieldyourbody.com/pro. And with that, there's one more point I wanted to underscore, and that is the NCB Pro requires professional installation, right? The NCB, which it's over there, I can't reach it right now, but the NCB, you can just plug into the wall and start using it. You don't need an expert to come and show you anything about it. But the NCB Pro requires professional installation. And Andrew is busy training experts right now. And they will be listed on the SYB website soon. So you can connect with them and talk about your own home. But I have some good news for you, right? For the time being, every order of the NCB Pro includes 30 minutes of consulting with Andrew. That's $198 value. And that is included at no extra cost. It's included in your purchase price. So you can use that time to have you can use that time to talk with Andrew yourself, but you can also have your electrician dial in and meet with Andrew, or you can have a BBI, a building biologist that you are working with, talk with Andrew, and Andrew can walk them through how the installation should be configured in your home. The consultation session will be handled via Zoom. You can schedule it at your convenience. You'll get all the booking information by email after your purchase. So we're about to get into Q&A, but quickly, I want to share with you your special offer that I promised you. And that is, for those of you attending this webinar, you can get the NCB Pro for 33% off with free shipping. Now, normally when we do these live webinars and I have a promotion for all of you, it expires at midnight, in like 5 hours after the webinar ends. But because of the nature of the NCB Pro, this time I wanted to extend the deadline a little bit. So this is actually valid through Monday, May 2nd. because I want to make sure all of you who are here tonight and who are interested in the NCB Pro, you have time to talk to whomever you need to talk to in order to make, plan your installation before making the purchase. So you have until midnight on Monday, May 2nd, to place your order for the NCB Pro with this massive discount of 33%. Just use the code PRO33. And you can learn more about the Pro and place your orders at shieldyourbody.com/pro. And so with that, I'm going to hold on one second. I gotta do some screen stuff here. And with that, it is time for questions. And let me pull up the Q&A pod. Okay, George says, please do a replay ASAP. This will be posted to our YouTube channel tomorrow. That's youtube.com/shieldyourbody. And the link to this presentation will go out, I believe, next Tuesday. So, but it'll be posted tomorrow. So that's at youtube.com/shieldyourbody. And we'll also actually post it to the product page. So shieldyourbody.com/pro. Let's see. Okay, Andrew, I think this one is for you. Does a well pump facilitate problems because of the grounding rod to the pump of the well? Is that the item that allows the problem, or are there other equipment factors involved?
Thank you for the question. Most of the time, the shaft is, touching water, and whether it's a metal shaft or whatever it is, a lot of time just the metal frame housing that's connecting the earth, however it's happening, the earth is actually carrying current. Just that is enough to be a conductive property for that earth current to get onto the equipment grounding conductor. And that's enough. Now, the motor appliance itself is a completely separate issue. If it's a variable frequency drive or something, putting dirty electricity or something on that, that's a completely separate topic, even though you could use the NCB Pro for that to choke the frequencies on the grounding conductor. But we're just talking about earth current right now from the grid jumping onto that appliance and coming back on the equipment grounding conductor into the home. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And thank you, Shirley. Salwa asks, and this is a good question, Andrew, and I know it's going to challenge you a little bit. Can you please give a somewhat simple explanation of how the NCB works? So pretend you're explaining it to me.
Absolutely. Can I pull up a picture?
Yeah, give me a second. I have to stop my share. Hold on. And then you should be able to do it now.
All right, so I'm going to share, and I'm going to do this screen, and I'm going to actually pull up a slide. Whoops, I got to change screens, reverse them. I'm going to actually do a very quick from last time. So if you saw last time's video, you will be bored, but if you didn't see the last then this will be very entertaining. How the NCB actually works, there's some components inside that look like this. Can you see how it works?
Yes.
Okay, so they're basically a gas discharge tube. It's like a neon light here. And then there's an inductor down here that chokes frequencies. And there's a resistor, and that's the blocking component for the current. So it screws to adjust it, and then current most of the time will stop right here at the resistor. So it basically is stopping current on this wire, this green wire, the equipment grounding. That's basically the simple version right there. Now I'm going to go one step further. And if you want to maintain your breakers, if there's a high voltage situation, this gas discharge tube lights up and the current goes directly back and trips the breaker. So that's the two basic ways that it works. Normal is a resistor stopping current. The second one's a high voltage situation where it takes this other path to trip a breaker.
Thank you.
That answers your question.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to reclaim host, and we have more questions. So, okay. And thank you for the question, Salwa. David has a question. I'm going to get to that in 1 second because Gail has a really good question that I should have remembered to put into the slides. Gail asks, will this work in the UK? And well, the answer is yes, but Andrew, why don't you give the longer answer?
Well, if you would have asked me that 2 days ago, I would have said no, and we're going to develop that. Now, I've done a lot of research yesterday on this, and the answer is yes, it will. And so we need to talk further about exactly how you're going to use it. And the number one rule is always fix your wiring problems first. Don't expect the NCB to come in and fix all your problems. Do you have, an appliance that's literally busted that needs to be fixed? I mean, I thoroughly want you to, if you're in the UK, I want to talk to your electrician. I want to go through a diagnostic, and I want to make sure that we fix things that need to be fixed. And then we use the NCB Pro to mop up the problems that have no fixes. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Gail, for that question. Okay, David asks, has this been confirmed by others, peer reviewed, not just testimonials and reviews? Now, Andrew, I know you and I, mostly you, have been looking for labs that are even capable of, because we commit at SYB, we commission tests for RF attenuation, for example, and there's labs that just do that, and we can contract the tests. But for the type of functionality that the NCB represents, that hasn't been so easy, right?
That's correct. What's the name of the person asking the question?
David Young.
David, do you know of an electrically sensitive person? And if so, do you mind revealing their name?
Well, he can't
do
that.
All right. Well, so this was built out of desperation to help electrically sensitive people when electricians could not help. The electrical power company would not and could not help, and that there are no engineer solutions that could help. So I developed this, and then on my website, you go under NCB and you will see the actual code, a PDF on the code. And if we need to, I'll pull it up and I'll show you the steps that I've gone through to get UL certification, and the about 5 different companies, Intertech, and to get it qualified. And long story short is there's no category for this. They wanted to use my device as to develop a brand new structure, because there are no devices that do this. And there's a good reason for that, but we can get into that later. So no, it's not UL certified because there is no category for it. And other than the manufacturer and the people that have developed it, testing it, there is no qualified, shall we say, third-party UL certification for it at this time.
I would also add to that, in part because of that, although we do this for all of our products, right? We explain to people how they can test for themselves to verify our product claims. We have 2 articles on the website. This one is about the NCB, and then this one is about the NCB Pro. And Andrew explains in detail how you would be, or a BBI that you might be working with, could verify the performance of the NCB and the NCB Pro, and that it actually does what we say it does. And if you're interested in reading these, there's this page here at shieldyourbody.com/NCB. And it's designed for people who've already bought an NCB. But you can go to this page again, shieldyourbody.com/NCB, and you can find all of these articles that we've written to support the NCB. And that includes the verification posts. So we explain in detail how people can verify our product claims. And of course, we have a 30-day, no questions asked return policy, as well as a lifetime warranty on every SYB product. So we're doing everything we can to convey that trust and empower our customers to have the confidence and knowledge to believe our product claims. But the answer to your question is, we have yet to identify a facility that would be in a position to, as you say, peer review the product claims. It's a great question, though, David. Thank you very much for asking it.
And thank you for making people aware of how that they can test it themselves. I think this is the most important and empowering thing of my device and this movement is we're not going to be trusting anybody anymore other than, people that we know or ourselves to actually confirm, is this working or not, rather than believing anybody else. We provide what tools you can buy, the Fluke 287, and how to test it yourself to confirm that this actually works.
Chris asks, can the NCB Pro be used on the main earth rod?
It could, but you don't want to do that. The basic premise is there is going to be current circulating somewhere, and you want that place to be your main ground rod, your main, what's called a grounding electrode conductor. So the neutral comes in and it's grounded right there at your grounding electrode conductor, and that's where you want that current to circulate. You just don't want it to come into the house. So this is the whole strategy, is to remove all of the secondary pathways through your house so that current only circulates outside your house.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris. I'm going to bounce around here a little bit. Boris asks, does this eliminate dirty electricity for the entire home? And the answer is it eliminates dirty electricity for the grounding system of the entire home. Right, Andrew?
I would even get more specific. Go down to the specific circuits, like the well circuit. If that's the source of this foreign current, you want to block it right there. So that would block that source of dirty electricity and current into your home. So you block that before it ever gets to your home, so it won't contaminate your entire home. Now, I'll say that the answer is no. It is not going to filter your whole home, though I am possibly going to invent an NCB that will filter the entire grounding conductor for your whole home, but that is not the purpose right now. The purpose of the NCB Pro is to address specific problems that are coming in, and then we block them before they come into the house.
Thank you. And thank you, Boris. I'm getting these notifications out of Zoom that people are raising their hands, and I don't fully, I don't know what that feature means. I mean, I know it means someone wants to talk, but if you could post your question in the Q&A pod instead, that would be great, and then we'll get to it. D asks, is there any warranty, and how long is the life of the product? And the answer is yes, there's a warranty. Every SYB product includes a lifetime warranty, which we are known for honoring. And we have, what I should do is actually post the link. Or Stephanie, can you please post the link in the chat pod to our warranty policy? That would be great. Thank you. And thank you for the question, D. Okay, this is a good one. And then there's actually some that were submitted in advance that I want to get to, but Gloria asks, and this is a good one for you, Andrew. She's effectively asking, what does professional installation mean? Does that mean a regular electrician or someone with specific training?
I call it a qualified person. That could be an electrician. It could be you, the homeowner. It depends where it's installed. If you have to open up an electrical panel box, I always recommend you hire an electrician to do that. So I am training people to become qualified so this qualified person would be able to help an electrician do a lot of this work, their hands in the panel, because there's a lot of things that takes a lot of time to really master about an electrical system. And I don't advise anybody to go into your electrical system without an electrician. You get an electrician to play around with all this stuff. Now, if you're comfortable with your electrical system as a homeowner, you are the authority having jurisdiction on your property, and you're welcome to do whatever you want with your electrical system. And nobody can tell you otherwise, because it's your property. So if you are comfortable with your electrical system, then you and I could work together and we can do the diagnostics, so you can go through the protocols and understand them yourself to do it. But I strongly recommend using an electrician and someone who's qualified, that has the training on understanding where and how to install it.
Thank you, Andrew. And then I'm just going to segue into another question, and I have no idea how you're going to answer this one, Andrew, but let's see what happens. Paul asks, I'm an electrician. How do you install the Pro? Now, I know you can't give like the full thing here, but we have an electrician who's interested. What are the next steps?
Great. So in the last presentation I did, the NCB Pro for professionals, I have 2 or 3 videos, and those videos are available on the SYB website or my home EMF tracing first page, homepage. They're right there. And it shows the installation, and you as an electrician can pick it up, boom, just like that, because you understand what the heck's going on. And if you don't want to watch those videos or go through that, just give me a call, and through a consult, I can show you the videos and the protocols, and we can talk it through very quickly.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. C. Voitas is asking, does the NCB duplicate in some ways the Power Perfect dirty electricity filter from Shielded Healing?
Different beasts.
Okay. I've never heard of that one. So is that what, another, the hot and neutral and not the ground, or is that just different? Is it different?
As far as I know, this is the only product that's actually filtering the grounding system. I don't know of any other product, and somebody does, put it in the chat. If somebody else is claiming to filter the grounding system, please let me know.
Thank you. Okay. This one, Micheline asks, I have a trailer at the beach and surrounded by other trailers and all their electrical connections. I feel plugged in. What to do? I am EMF sensitive. Home computer burns my fingers, headaches when I go to stores. Thank you. Now, obviously, you can't solve her situation on this webinar, but for a person like that, like Micheline, what do you advise for getting started? What's the next step? What's something productive that she can do?
Yeah, other than moving, it's a horrible situation to be in. I've been, all mobile homes need to have an NCB Pro, because the way it's grounded, you're going to have current coming in and out of the frame of your house, and it's going to be on all your appliances, period. Now, and unfortunately, mobile home parks, there's a lot of other factors. The water pipe coming in from trailer to trailer, all this the cable internet, all these other factors that are creating a lot of different current sources into your grounding system. These have to be sorted out one by one by one, and then removed. Now, this has to start, of course, everybody on the call here needs to get this information. You always start with an electrical diagnostic in the panels. You get an electrician, and you get my EMF Tracing 102 book, and you get a building biologist, or you get me on the phone, and you work out the wiring problems first. And I bet probably 50–60% of your problems would go away just by solving the electrical problems. Whatever's left, I have a water pipe solution. If you got current on your water pipe, that's a completely different solution. That you get a plumber and you cut the pipe and you do all this other kind of stuff. And then your cable internet, you got that. You have a ground loop isolator, you put it on that. And then whatever is left coming into your grounding system of your trailer, that's where the NCB Pro excels, because there are solutions for everything else. And the NCB is when you've failed on everything and there's no solution left. That's when you pull the NCB Pro out.
Thank you. And then I would then answer also to Micheline. There is a list of EMRSs. So that's the people trained in electromagnetic radiation specialization from the Building Biology Institute, available at this, I'm putting this into the chat pod, so it won't be in the archive, but it's right here for those of you who are attending. That is a great place to start a search for an expert who's at least familiar with these issues. And if they're not specialists in the particular problems you're facing, they'll know who to get in touch with. And we also, if there are none near you, we have an online consulting option on our website. So you just go to Shield Your Body. I just pasted the link for that in our chat here as well. You just go to shieldyourbody.com and click on the consulting button, and that is also within EMRS. So at least, and that's with Kathy Cook. And again, there's a limited, she can't like get into your house over Zoom and actually fix the stuff in your house, but she can give you guidance and feedback on what next steps would be specifically useful in your situation. Thank you, Micheline.
And just so you know, I travel
yeah.
all over the country helping people with their homes. And if you wanted to go that far and you weren't able to get the help you need, if you really want to do it, you call me up, you make an appointment, I get in my truck and I travel.
So, and Andrew's, I just pasted Andrew's URL in the chat, and that is homeemftracing.com. Great. I missed this one earlier. Did Sam Millam, Shirley asked, did Sam Millam also note diabetes as a disease of civilization? I believe the answer to that is yes. I believe diabetes is type 3. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I'm saying there are the three major ones: heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
Thank you. Okay, boy, there are way more questions now than when we started answering questions. Okay, great question here. Trisha asks, how do we know which option to choose when purchasing? And we have, let me bring this up. Give me a second here to load this in a window and share it. So this is the product page at shieldyourbody.com/pro. This is where you would go to learn more about or buy the Pro. And if you scroll down a little bit, and we're building this all in kind of real time. So we're just working to get as much out here as possible. If you scroll down to which version is right for me, we have a table here that explains the 4 different versions that are currently available. Andrew, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I realize this is too much information, and I just want everybody to think about it simply. There's two categories. Is the grounding conductor affiliated with a breaker? That's category 1, and most of the appliances in your houses are. So yes, if you're filtering something and it's served by an appliance or an outlet that has a breaker on it, that's category 1, and that's the 120 volt versions. And you'll see that the first 2 there are supposed to say 120 volts. The 240 volt ones are for if it is not connected to a breaker, like a stake in the yard outside. There's no appliance, there's no breaker. Those are the 240 volt ones. So that breaks it down into 2 categories.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Trisha. Great question. Oh, let's see. Okay. Anonymous asks, okay, so the NCB does not correct contact current, dirty electricity, and magnetic field. I'm a bit confused. So the NCB does correct contact current, dirty electricity, and magnetic field, but it's within a limited scope, right, Andrew? That's
correct. So this is, whether it is a source from outside the home coming into the home, it addresses that specific source. So if you want a whole house solution, we can work that out, but it's not smart, because you want to actually bleed off your problems and have them go back to your service. So you actually don't want to choke that pathway. You actually want to choke the other sources, the other pathways. So I don't want to get too complex into this, but basically think of it as a specific targeted solution to individual problems.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I don't know what this means. Juan asks, will the NCB work on a TT system as we have in Spain?
So TT systems are basically two separate grounding systems. So absolutely, yes, the whatever you want to call the residential side, or if you're off grid, you will have some current coming in on your own independent grounding system, and you want to make sure that you break that. And yes, the 240-volt version would work for that. And we can talk further to get into the specific application.
Thank you. And thank you, Juan. I don't understand this question either, Andrew. Hopefully you do. An anonymous asks, is it correct to say that the NCB Pro eliminates the ground connection via the resistor, but will reintroduce it in case of high voltage incident?
Yes, that's close enough. You have a correct understanding.
And then second part of the question, is the unit CSA approved for use in Canada? And I don't know it. Okay. Thank you. Oh, David was answering your question earlier. He is electrically sensitive himself, but I didn't see that until just now. Oh, and then he posted an appreciation for your answer. So thank you, David. Let's see. Does it below? I don't know if this is does it eliminate the below only in the ground current? Oh, yes. So LL is asking, when we talk about eliminating ground current, eliminating dirty electricity, and eliminating magnetic field EMF, is that only in the ground current?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Grounding conductor, the wire, the grounding conductor wire.
Okay, Daniel asks, how much current can this handle before it becomes a problem? Say if there are several amps on the grounding system and there is no explanation left after proper diagnosis and mitigation.
Basically, let's put it this way. The NCB is rated up to like 200 amps. I mean, it can handle a massive hit. In fact, the short-term hits are like 20,000 amps for lightning strikes and things like that. They're instantaneous or microsecond surges or something like from lightning. But that's why I always recommend you've got to look at your panel diagnostics first to fix problems. Like you could have an amp of current on your grounding system from your furnace because of the transformer in the furnace. So you have a constant, an amp constantly. So if you, the components can easily handle 2 amps, blocking 2 amps on something. But, you just need to, like I said, be smart about this. I entirely recommend, if you can all afford it, fix your problems first with an electrician and then mop up with the NCB Pro after.
Thank you. And thank you, Daniel. Okay, there's a question here. It's a long one. This was submitted in advance in the forum before the webinar. So bear with me because I think it's good. I've read that the NCB Pro requires professional installation. In an article regarding verifying performance, it says if you haven't already gone through the NCB Pro protocol, it is imperative to do the full panel diagnosis and track all of the foreign and local sources. As we cut one path, the remaining ones will increase. This is a process described in training videos and webinar. So the question is, if the Pro is professionally installed, do you still recommend that the customer go through the protocol? Additionally, do you think that the NCB Pro would work well for a house that already has a static whole house dirty electricity filter and static plugins as well, or if both the static and the NCB Pro working together could cause any problems?
I don't anticipate them having any problems. In fact, I think the NCB Pro is kind of required whenever you're using filtering, because some filtering products actually dump the dirty electricity onto the grounding system. That's how they work. It's called the dumping ground. So the first part of your question is the protocol. The electrician and I will go through the protocol to clean up your panel and to install the NCB Pro. So the answer is yes, you need to go through the protocol I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And another question that was submitted in advance, and Andrew, just answer however you feel is most effective and appropriate for the webinar. Can you discuss the various aspects to consider regarding grounding my bedroom shielding paint, which is grounded to an outside patio copper rod by a wire that has to reach about 30 feet? This is a ground floor 1970s construction condo with old wiring and plumbing.
Well, I had, if you don't mind, let me show that
Yep. You want
slide
screen share back?
from this pro presentation.
You want screen share back, Andrew?
If you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
They might find it entertaining just to get a visual of the concept of what I'm thinking about here.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about an outside grounding reference, whatever you want to call that. All right, so we're going to share this slide and then we're going to go boom to this now. All right, so bear with me while I find the slide. So shielding paint solutions. It's I have a lot of baggage and harmful, painful emotional history from grounding paint in my bedroom, and that's one of the main instigators of why I developed the NCB, because whenever you have external grounding to your shielding paint, you potentially have current coming into that and there's nothing you can do about it. So to help you specifically with an answer, the NCB Pro, yes, can help in some situations, but we have to get really, really specific about, what's the problem and get into diagnostics. So let me just show you to help you understand what the problem is. So when you have an external ground rod attached to shielding paint here, so what can happen is you have grid energizing the surfaces of that and also contaminating the grounding system of your home when it gets onto these surfaces. So we don't know how much the shielding paint is actually touching your grounding system or not, or if it's completely isolated. We have to get to know that. Now, if you put the NCB in there, that will stop the foreign current from energizing those plates or materials. Now, the next part is, what if lightning struck and that comes racing into those surfaces? That's actually the code actually addresses this 250.4A2, I believe, says if you have surfaces that are likely to become energized, you need to have them bonded to the source so they can actually trip a breaker. Now, if you're only grounded to outside, that violates code because you have likely to be energized, and that will arc. That's a different part of the codes that says these surfaces, your home grounding system can jump to this foreign grounding system. So that's a problem. And one of the recommendations is if you bond this, you put a wire between the outside to the inside source, you put an NCB on there to be able to equalize this pressure before it jumps and creates a fault. That is a possible solution. So without going into deeper details about that, that's showing you how complex this system is.
Thank you. Okay, just setting back up here. This is sort of beyond the amount of time you have to answer a question, but I think it's a good one, and any useful insight you can give would be great. So someone submitted the question, what is the best way to ground when living in a condo with not much nature nearby?
Yeah, there's two different pieces to grounding. One is discharging your battery, your salt, your electrolytes. You're charged by being around electric fields. So you're in an apartment with a bunch of electric fields around you, which are the problem. We have to deal with the electric field problem. So I'll get back to that. So you're all charged up. And so you need to go and discharge somewhere. And yes, going to a park, going to the beach, doing whatever it is to, put your feet onto the earth, hug a tree, to discharge this excessive energy is the most healthiest thing you can do. Now, if you cannot do that, like you said, if you don't have access to this other stuff, make it a priority in your life to get out and do that. So just change your life, because being around inside around appliances that have a high electric field is the problem. Now, how do we get rid of the electric field is the part of the major solution. So now you have to get an electric field meter to actually sense, not a body voltage meter, not a grounded reference point, you have to get an electric field meter. And gigahertz solutions 3830B or whatever it is on the SLT site. I have references how to get an electric field meter. You want a floating measurement, and then you want to turn the power off is the easiest way to get rid of electric fields, of course, around your bed, around surface, your office surfaces. Have a goal in your mind, get rid of electric fields first, and then you are less charged, so you don't have to discharge as much. Now, of course, people are using grounding. You actually grab onto a wire that's plugged into the wall to discharge. And this is why I developed the NCB, is if you're actually grabbing onto a wire, you're actually getting the problems from your grounding system in your home or whatever grounded out into the yard. So that's why the NCB comes in to filter the harmful current that could come hit your body. So I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from just coming up with a simple solution, but I want you to understand how complex the system is, and I want to empower you with meters to actually get an accurate sense of what's going on, because using body voltage is not an accurate sense of harm.
Thank you. And I'll read one more that was submitted in advance, then I'll get back to the ones here from the room. Can the NCB be installed in series or in parallel to a ground rod used to ground RF shielding material?
It would be in series.
Thank you. Okay. Now back to the room. Eileen asks, what if you don't have well water, but municipal water supply? Is there any benefit for buying the NCB Pro? I'm electrically sensitive due to neuro-Lyme disease.
I'm very sympathetic with Lyme. Both my wife and I have worked through Lyme for many years and believe that we're on top of the horse now, finally. So the first number one thing about getting out of a Lyme or any chronic disease, mold, is remove the electromagnetic field stimulation of the infections. So you're absolutely right. Now, if you're in an old city like St. Louis, you're toast. The water pipes are all copper from house to house, from electrical service to electrical service. You have to cut the water pipe. You have to cut that current. Now, for hopefully, if you're in a newer city and a newer
can
home,
I just step in there for a second? When you're talking about cutting the water pipe, you're not talking about cutting off from the water system. You're talking about performing surgery on the pipe and inserting an insulating material in there, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
The water pipe solution. It's a book I have on my website. In my Killing Current series, goes into the details, provides the code, teaches people how to do it and what you need to tell plumbers and electricians how to do it safely. Now, hopefully in a newer home, it's not a problem. There's a lot of PVC pipe or PEX, food grade PEX used in water pipes. So it's not a problem in newer homes, but you still have other grounding systems that are having problems. Every home has current on the grounding conductors, period. That's just the way the grid is set up. How much you have is the question, and how much you ground yourself to the problem. That's really where the system problem starts. And I teach a lot of people how to just not plug into your house grounding system, how to use a towel on your refrigerator or your oven or your whatever surfaces that you're touching that you're getting hit with. Well, just put a towel on it and you're not going to get electrocuted. And these are very simple and free points, how to just remove yourself from getting into the circuit of current that's on the grounding system.
Thank you. And thank you, Eileen. Okay, CS asks, I'm already using Stetzer filters. With the NCB Pro, would I still need or want to use those Stetzer filters?
Yeah, Stetzer filters are fantastic filters for getting high frequencies off of your electrical system. And of course, there's good strategies for how and where to install the Stetzers, but the NCB Pro is completely different system than your Stetzers. Your Stetzers are for a live circuit that's pulling power. You're going to filter things that are on. You turn the breaker off and there's no power, there's nothing to filter on the hot and the neutral, so the Stetzers go dead. So if you're turning the power off to your bedroom at night, you got rid of all of the anything that needs to be filtered, but you still have the equipment grounding conductor that never gets turned off, that's bringing potential magnetic fields and electric fields and the electricity into your sleeping area. So it's a completely different beast for a different wire.
Thank you. Okay. Jill asks, our home is over 30 years old. When we bought it, the panel was 100 amp and it was full. Instead of removing it and installing a 200 amp, we just installed another 100 amp panel and connected it to the system. All work was done by a qualified licensed electrician. Can the NCB Pro connect with this type of setup?
Sure. So you're just dealing with, I would need to know where your main disconnect switch is. And I often I'm just going to say it. I always recommend getting the neutral bus bar and the grounding bus bar isolated in your main panel. Now, it sounds like you have two panels now. So the way, without getting too complex, I try to get the electric meter with a breaker. And it's called a meter disconnect combo. And that's where your neutral will be grounded. And then all of your electrical panels after that will be what's called sub panels. And they'll have your neutral bus bar and your grounding bus bar completely isolated. But it sounds like right now in your setup, your neutral and your grounding conductors are all tied together and all swimming together. So that's an issue in itself. So depending how much you want to optimize that system, yes, you would definitely need the NCB Pro to, around your sleeping area or wherever, your issues are. Let's talk specifically about what they are. You would need to separate your body from that influence of those neutrals or grounds touching.
Thank you. And thank you, Jill. Okay. It's a little bit open-ended, Andrew, but I'm going to ask you to run with it for a couple of minutes if you'd like. And that is, Shirley asks, thank you for clarifying the purpose of the NCB for specific problems. Can you please give some more examples that would help us appreciate the functionality of this new product?
I'd be happy to. So
do you want to share a screen or?
I would like to.
Okay. Boy, look at that smile. Kid in a candy store. Okay, hold on.
All right.
There you go.
Right before I could.
There we go. We're back. And now.
Part two.
Yeah. And now you can share a screen and I will be right back. So go ahead.
All right. So appreciating the different problems that the NCB is dealing with. So here is some common code violations that I find in the home. So Stephanie, can you give me a confirmation that the full screen is showing up on the screen?
Yes, you are showing up.
Very good. And the cursor. Okay, good.
Yep.
Now, so, I've been doing electrical work for about 15 years and full-time since 2017. And if you look in this screen here, see this bare copper wire. This homeowner used this bare copper wire as the main return current conductor for this circuit, for this outlet. So there's no neutral on here. This equipment ground conductor is the neutral. So the way this is wired, whenever anything is plugged into, in fact, there was a TV plugged into this outlet, all of the current that came out on the hot went back onto this grounding conductor. So, 2, 3, 4 amps was constantly on the grounding system because of the way this is wired. Now, ours already shown you the dryer and ranges come from the factory with the neutral and the ground together initially. So there's another load on your grounding system of more current that is existing. A lot of sub panels, AC people pride themselves as being able to put current, in sub panels, AC panels. So you have this white and green white wires on sub panels all the time that are putting current on grounding conductors. Inside outlets, this gets pushed into the wall and this grounding conductor pushes up onto the neutral. Of course, cable internet, there's current coming in on the sheath there. This one has half an amp on the grounding conductor into your grounding system. Sub panels, this is grounding conductor has 0.8 amps on it. More sub panels with grounding conductors and neutrals together. This grounding conductor here has 5 amps on it from a water pipe, and that water pipe bond runs throughout the entire house. So that all that current, of course, causes magnetic fields around this water pipe underneath the sink. He showed you those already. Lots of creative wiring where neutrals and grounds are bonded together. Dryers that are 3-wire and should be 4-wire, this one's putting 4 amps on the grounding system. This one has the neutral bonded directly to the case there. I could go on and on. Code violations, green screw and sub panels putting current. This says 2 amps on a grounding system because of the bonding screw was left in. We took it out. It went down to 0.8. So I can go on and on about all the grounding problems in homes, and the neutral comes in and screwed to a wire frame home, and you can see burn marks around the grounding conductors. This neutral is basically attached to the frame of the home. So just on and on about all of the different problems that we have in homes that without, getting too deep into it, every home has a grounding conductor problem with foreign current coming in, or God only knows. The older your home, the more problems there are, more generations of electricians coming in and doing creative wiring, more AC guys coming in, more homeowners doing creative wiring. So I hope you appreciate that without you getting in there with an electrician, doing a full panel diagnostic, correcting all the problems, I can't even imagine, you can't, there's no way to say.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Shirley. That was a great question. And I could tell it made Andrew's whole day. So thank you. Boris asks, I recently bought the NCB. Thank you for your invention. We had our home tested and I was told we have a lot of dirty electricity from the grid. Does the Pro help with this?
On your grounding system, yes.
So on the grounding system, but on the power circuits, the hot and the neutral, Boris would need another solution running in tandem with the NCB Pro.
Correct. That's where the Stetcher filters, the green waves, whatever else device you decide that you want to use, those excel at, dumping the dirty electricity from the hot onto the neutral. And of course, the neutrals are grounded someplace. So eventually it's going to get onto the grounding system. And that's why the NCB Pro is so important.
Thank you. Okay. Orem asks, and this is the Orem that is Orem. Hi. You just spoke about this, but when you take care of neutral to neutral and neutral to ground wiring errors in house wiring that cause magnetic fields and reduce electric fields where people sleep and at their daytime desks. Oh, this is a long sentence. You know what, Andrew, I'm gonna read it, but I'm also going to put it in chat so that you can see it.
Sure.
And reduced wireless RF sources and reduced dirty electricity. What percentage of clients still have current/dirty electricity coming in on the ground who have been helped with the NCB?
There's like 3 questions in there. So let me do it one piece at a time. 100% of everybody has dirty electricity on their grounding system. So the second part is, what percent of my clients after installing the NCB? So after installing NCB, they have 0 on that specific circuit. Now, how many of my clients? Well, I'd like to think that everybody that's purchased my NCB has been helped by it. Otherwise, I don't leave their house until they are, or I don't stop helping them until they are, or I remove the NCB entirely. So, and fortunately, that has not happened. So there's a lot of diagnostics that go into what is the specific solution. We have to diagnose what's the problem. So I'm always go to the source of the problem first. So you're right about neutral ground problems. You fix those first. What's the remaining problem that needs to be fixed? If you can't do it some other way, then that's why I built the NCB Pro. And everybody needs to know that Orem is one of the leading electromagnetic specialists in our country, and he knows what he's talking about.
Thank you. And thank you, Orem. Okay. C. Voitas asks, is the discount for the wired version? And yeah, it's the version you see here on the screen. We call it the Pro, but it is the one with the wires coming out of it. And the discount you see on the screen is for the Pro version. And that again lasts until May 2nd. So that's through Monday. And the discount code is Pro33. Anonymous asks, would it be beneficial to put the NCB Pro on most subpanels as standard practice?
That's a blanket statement, and I don't want to fall into that trap. No, you want to specifically address specific problems with it. Whole house home, choking the equipment grounded conductor feed that comes into your sub panel, that would work to filter stuff, but without actually knowing if there's a secondary source problem, you could make things worse. And I have in the protocol and in my other slideshows, I go into the advanced installation processes. There are sometimes multiple 2 or 3 foreign sources into your home. If you cut one of them, the other 2 increase. So, I'm not trying to say that you need to buy more NCB Pros. You just need to be smart about how you strategize this, because you might be able to use an NCB Pro for 2 of those sources, but it's not a blanket. Everybody needs just to install an NCB on their panel and walk away. This is, unfortunately, at this time, a fairly advanced technical process. And I hope that those that have tried everything else maybe haven't uncovered the real problem yet. And finally, the NCB Pro can address that.
Thank you. Another question about whether there'll be a replay, and there will. Rod asks, I have an underground lawn watering system surrounding my home. Would this be a source of concern? And could the NCB Pro help with this source of electrical current?
As with everything, I'd like somebody to actually test it to see if it's a problem. Hopefully it would be broken somewhere with PVC or PEX or plastic pipe, and it wouldn't be a ground source coming in. But let's say it's worst case scenario, it's metal all the way around the yard and metal way all the way into your water pipes, and your water pipe is all metal all the way into your bathtub. So at some point, yes, we need to insert some non-conductive material to isolate that grounded reference from your electrical system in your house.
Thank you. And thank you, Rod. This is a good question from Ren. If you are using the NCB or the NCB Pro for EMF protection items that need to be grounded, can they maintain to reduce electric fields as well while eliminating all 3 problems? So because of the high resistance in the device, I was wondering if the capability to reduce electric fields may have to be compromised.
Thank you. It's brilliant, and you're extremely perceptive about the electric field problem. When you choke or stop current, the voltages back up, and that means the electric field increases. So how you install the NCB Pro is very important. This is where we get into the NCB, the plug version, and why there's a dial inside of it. Let's say you have a grounding mat and you're using your grounding mat, but you have current coming into it. Well, the dial on the NCB allows you to adjust the amount of current that's exposed to here to have the electric field go up and down. So the more you block the current, the electric field backs up and increases. The more you allow current, the electric field goes down. So here's the negotiation with the devil. If you can get rid of the electric field to begin with, we have a less of a problem to mop up. So I always want to back it up. What's the problem? Is electric field a part of the initial problem? So the number one solution to an electric field is turn the power off. So without getting into specifics about your question, you're exactly right. We have to address the electric field, and installing NCB Pro does slightly reduce the electric field in some ways and some properties, but it's not a blanket statement that it will reduce your electric fields. In fact, and sometimes it will increase it somewhere. And this is a game of whack-a-mole, is what I call it in one of my protocols, is you are dealing with these problems that shift around the house. And that's why we have to do a complete diagnostic to make sure we know what are all the sources, so we deal with all of them, because you will be making something else worse unless you know what all the problems are.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Ren. Okay, Boris has another question regarding your comment about shielding paint. My bedroom and exterior home were professionally shielded, but both are grounded via a ground pole. Does this situation require the NCB Pro?
All right. How do you know? How do you feel? Do you feel
he,
bad?
he can't answer, but yeah, keep.
So I'm just going to do some rhetorical questions.
Yeah.
So if you're fine, no, you don't need an NCB Pro. If you're happy and you got the RF shielding, and what I go through in the my course, the Living in a 5G World, is the first problem is electric fields, and you of course turn the power off. Then you don't have an electric field problem. Then you can actually deal with the radio frequency. But if you're using radio frequency shielding that requires grounding, you've just created two problems. You now have a grounding problem, which is of course electric fields and current. But if you can get a RF shielding solution that does not create a secondary problem by using fabrics to block, or microwave absorbing foam. And I go into this in the shielding with in a 5G world, non-grounded solutions. That doesn't create another problem we have to solve. So the answer to you is, I don't know. If you feel great, then no, you don't need the NCB Pro.
Thank you. Okay. This is another longer one, so I'm going to paste it into chat for you, Andrew, as I read it. I've researched that net current issues can be found in greater than 50% of home wiring. Question one, does that mean that more than 50% of electricians out there have created faulty wiring by joining all the neutral wires together into a single wire nut that puts a large magnetic field on multiple circuit breakers? And question two, do the NCB protocol and procedures address net current issues pre-NCB installation?
Answer to the second part is yes. We are dealing with the neutral ground connections, which are, if you want to call that net current in the home, in-home net current. External net current is the same thing. It's foreign current sources. So the answer to part two is yes, it does address those. The part one solution is, you've got to understand the National Electrical Code is a fire standard. So the electricians are very highly trained individuals, and a lot of respect for them and the hardships that they undergo on a regular basis. It's a very hard business, and but they're not trained in what I'm talking about. They're experts at other things. So what we're dealing is we're bringing in a new standard to the fire code. We're bringing in a medical grade standard and totally changing the criterion. The machines, the materials that you use to test current, none of that is used by electricians. The diagnostic processes, they aren't taught electricians, because why would they have to? As long as it's bonded correctly. I was in an inspection where the inspector was walking around and I had an amp clamp carrying 2 amps on a water bond. And I pointed it out to him and said, don't we have a solution or something? The code provided a solution for 2 amps on the grounding conductor. And he says, nope, it's bonded. So it's just a different beast. We're starting a new chapter. So I want to put in a link to everyone for my website, 5G, Staying Healthy in a 5G presentation. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
And also I'm going to put a discount code in there for everybody as well.
Great. You want to do that? Can you right this second, or?
Here's the copy of the link. And
good. While we're
boom,
talking
there's
about it,
the link.
So this is going into the chat pod.
Very good. And this is also the Andrew 5G discount, is the very, very steep discount for everyone. So the first
I was just gonna say, everyone, if you want, open the chat pod, and Andrew has pasted a link to his course along with a big discount code. And Andrew, that's the Staying Healthy in a 5G World course. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. C. Voitas asks, is the NCB mounted on the home exterior?
It can be. I found one time a phone bond was carrying 1 amp of current into the house. So that's exterior. And, grounding a stake in the yard or something like that, you can configure that somewhere outside. It's, of course, not the greatest solution to have something outside, because you rather have something more accessible to it. You can confirm it, test it, adhere it wherever you want. But yes, it's better to be underneath an electric panel or underneath a sheath, so it's not directly hit by weed eaters and the weather and all that kind of stuff. Even though it is in a nice sealed container, and it's, I wouldn't say it's waterproof, but it's got, things in it to protect it. And the glands on the end have a tightening seal on it to keep the water out and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty hardy. But yes, the answer is yes, it can be installed on the outside.
Thank you. Okay, here's a interesting question from Anonymous. If it's not feasible to have all the other problems fixed prior to having the NCB Pro installed, do you think the NCB Pro would still be helpful?
If you have a problem that is current on the grounding system, yes, the NCB Pro can be helpful.
Thank you. Gay asks, my electrician grounded my ducting for my furnace as recommended years ago from an EMF specialist. And he asks, is this an issue? I guess maybe a better question is, how would he know whether it's an issue?
Yeah, exactly. So grounding ductwork, that means that there must have been some current on your ductwork, and he grounded it to bleed off or provide a pathway back to its source. So it would choose the grounding conductor as a better pathway and pull it away from the other problems. Well, you should really figure out why there's current on your duct and get rid of that, and then not require the extra grounding, because it could go both ways. You could increase the problems to your ductwork, lightning surges, electrical grid problems, other issues. We don't know. So it sounds like it needs to be explored.
Thank you. Let's see. Gail asks, is there an issue with dimmer switches?
There sure are issues with dimmer switches. Those little switching mechanisms in there 20,000 times a second, that creates some nasty, dirty electricity. So, there are a lot of filters that address that those switching frequencies. My advice is just switch that sucker out for $10 and save yourself a lot of headaches, and just make it a normal switch.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember learning that when we were writing Overpowered, and it was because I was a big fan of, I'm a big fan of controlling the lighting in my where I live, with precision and creating the mood and all that. And I was very disappointed that I had to get rid of that for my life.
A lot of people don't understand that the new LEDs need to be rated with an LED dimmer. A normal dimmer is not suitable to handle LED lighting.
Huh, I did not know that either. John asks, if a smart meter is installed on a home, will the NCB remove the dirty electricity produced by the smart meter?
Nope, but it will on the grounding conductor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kim asks, do we need to be worried that installing the NCB or NCB Pro will negate appliance or equipment warranties from the manufacturers?
Not that I know of. Equipment warranties on the equipment grounding conductor is outside the appliance. It's not inside the appliance. I don't think it applies. I could be wrong about that, and somebody else wants to chime in on that. I don't think that, no.
Thank you. Let's see. I'll pick one. There's just a handful left.
If you don't mind, I'm going to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Insurance claims about why did something fall, fail or something like that. Your electrical system is being hit constantly every day by surges. GFCI outlets are constantly burning out bad. You'd be surprised at how many of them are bad. Basically half of them are toast already. The ones that are in your house, 50% of them are bad. So they're already toast. They're already bad. The NCB Pro minimizes the exposure, how many hits your appliances are getting hit with on a regular basis by choking these surges. So you're actually going to increase your ability of your appliances to survive everyday hits. So if you're worried about manufacturer warranties, this is one way to increase the livelihood of your appliance and to provide more protection where none exists now.
Okay. And now Shirley asks, under what conditions are the benefits of the NCB best matched? I just left the home of a person who is sandwiched between two people's homes whom have just had solar installed. The buzz as I entered her house was dramatic. Happened to have a green wave meter and measures in the high 200s and 300s. Turned off selected circuit breakers and it went down dramatically. So will the NCB manage the issues despite there being two other homes with solar on a common transformer?
So it's a really good question. Thank you for bringing up the EMI green wave EMI diagnostic. You plug it in and only sensing the hot in the ground. Now the EMI or the Stetzerizer dirty electricity meters do not sense the grounding conductor. And so we're talking about the grounding conductors today. So everybody on the program, and I'm glad there's still 80 people on the call today. This is only addressing the grounding conductor. All the other dirty electricity filtering devices only are measuring the hot and the neutral. So you can't measure with anything you have right now for filtering with those equipment. You need to get the Fluke 287 or a picoscope and an amp clamp and other kinds of things to test the grounding conductor. So yes, solar inverters, they're going to make the grounding system very, very noisy. So the NCB can help protect the person in their home. Yes. But with the power off, you just stopped the grounding. Well, let's put it this way. You turned off a lot of the problems in your own home. So don't forget that there are problems in that home that could be fixed. Change out all the lights to LEDs, from LEDs to incandescents, and a lot of those things. And even if you turn off all the power to this house, the grounding system is still live from the outside. And that's where the NCB Pro comes in.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm going to try to get to a couple more questions here. Just a reminder for everybody that the special offer for tonight, it's still up on the screen, and that is for 33% off the NCB Pro. And unlike normally when the offer expires at midnight, this one lasts for a few days. So you have until Monday, May 2nd, in order to take advantage of this. That should give you time to talk with an expert or plan out which version you want. And when you're ready, you go to shieldyourbody.com/pro and then use the code PRO33 at checkout. Let's see. Okay, here. Ren asks, could you elaborate a little more on how the NCB Pro can work effectively for an electrical system where equipment grounding conductor is isolated from neutral? In my country, Japan, they are not bonded at the main panel. Water pipes are commonly made of PVC. Gas pipes are not allowed to be connected to the equipment grounding conductor. TV cables are grounded, but where they are grounded is outside the home. Some houses may have more than one grounding point for different appliances. Apartments' grounding system is commonly connected to steel structure of the building.
It's a really good question. I'm learning more and more about this. And I appreciate any feedback you can from these TT systems, basically two grounding systems, and they rely on ground fault circuit interrupters or leakage current devices. So basically, in America, we have GFCIs, and basically they only sense the hot and the neutral. There's no sensing on the grounding conductor. They assume if there's an imbalance between the hot and neutral, it goes to the grounding conductor and it'll trip above 5 milliamps. But there's nothing actually sensing the grounding conductor itself. And there's some leakage current devices, but they're set for like 30 milliamps. So there's nothing stopping that underlying current swimming from water pipes to other, in a circuit through your home on the grounding system. That's why the NCB is there. Now, the NCB activates if there is a fault. So it will still activate your current protection devices, your whatever you want to call them, the ground fault circuit interrupters, or they're called RCDs, the residual current devices that are sensing this problem in those countries. So yes, it can work synergistically with your devices to keep your protection, but stop that underlying current flow. And yes, get the meters to test the before and after of how much current is getting in on the grounding system.
Thank you. Let's see here. Rod asks, I live in a garden home community where the single family homes are extremely close. I've had trouble with Wi-Fi in the past because so many homes and brands of routers are near to one another. Also, all the electrical utilities are run underground. Am I more at risk for exposure to electromagnetic fields?
Electromagnetic fields in the entire infinite universe of all frequencies. I'd rather target it to specific things. And since this is just about the conversation for current on grounding conductors, rather contain it to just that discussion. I would say we're all getting hit massively unless you work really hard to pull the devices off of your body, like your cell phone and cordless phones and Wi-Fi routers and your Nest electrical and security system out of your home. You're going to be hit with more EMFs from your own devices in your home than your neighbors. So go through and clean out your home first rather than worrying about the neighborhood first.
Thank you. Great answer, Andrew. And thank you, Rod. Okay, everyone. I think that does it for this webinar, though, based on the number of questions we had tonight, as well as the number of questions we had last month when we introduced the NCB, I am quite confident that we will have Andrew back at some point to address more of these questions about the ground. I've been learning a lot from Andrew, and I've also been learning just how much information there is out there about grounding and grounding systems, and how many questions and there is on this. It's this thing that we all sort of take for granted, like that third prong on the plug, and it just is there and we plug it in, or it's something we think is simple, like, yeah, I should go walk barefoot. But it turns out, there's a whole lot of information here, and there's not a whole lot of people with Andrew's knowledge and expertise. So Andrew, thank you very much for coming out tonight and educating all of us and creating the NCB and the NCB Pro. And also thank you for trusting SYB with your brilliant inventions.
It is an honor, and thank you, R, for your expertise to help me get this out to the public, to get these solutions to people, and to help educate people about the real sources of a lot of symptoms and problems that people unfortunately have not been able to learn about and provide a solution for them. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you. And final reminder, this offer, this special offer, it runs for a few days. So you have until Monday, midnight on Monday. That's like the end of Monday, not the start of Monday. You have till the end of Monday to decide if you want to take advantage of this offer. It's 33% off. For those of you who've been in my community for a while, I don't run sales this big very often. I do it for certain products when we're launching them, and this is one of them. So if you're interested in the Pro, this is an unbeatable price, and just use the code PRO33 at checkout, and you do that by the end of Monday, and you can save $150 on each Pro. And another reminder, right? Each order includes 30 minutes of consulting with Andrew that you can use for yourself or for your chosen expert, electrician or a building biologist, and really kind of plan out how you're going to be doing this. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And one final note, the archive of this will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow. I'll probably also have time to make sure it gets up on the product page tomorrow. So if you go to shieldyourbody.com/pro tomorrow, you'll see this archive, and it'll be sent out by email next week. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon.